There is a distinct difference between mental weakness and mental illness. Mental illness and mental weakness are not the same thing. It's interesting. I was listening to an interview with Sean Stevenson, and he brought on a lady, Maya Rashora. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. Forgive me if that's incorrect. But she really broke down the difference between mental weakness and mental illness. And she used an analogy in which she talked about the body, right? When your body is ill, you need to go to a doctor. When your body is weak, it needs to be strengthened. The question is, do you have the tools to do so? Listen to this example, and then we'll break it down just a little bit more.
Then you have mental illness, which is where, just like when you get physically ill, you would go to a doctor, or, you might be injured. So in the same way, you would go and seek help. And then you also have mental weakness, which is a very human thing. Maybe you've had bad sleep, or you've had heartbreak, something's happened. So naturally, you're not going to be performing the best you can mentally. But then again, do you have the tools to come back to a better state of mental health because you know how to stay mentally fit? Then you have
Listen, that to me was profound because a lot of times we conflate everything to mental illness. But the reality is sometimes it is simply mental weakness. Now, if you are ill, you need to go get treatment. Like, that's it. But you have to delineate between whether or not you're ill or if you're just simply weak. And if you're simply weak, you have to put the tools in place to get strong. And a lot of times when you encounter the most mentally resilient individuals, they are mentally resilient because they've gone through something. They've overcome challenges, they've met obstacles, and they've had to, dig in and figure out a way to overcome those obstacles and or challenges. That's what helps them to build that level of resilience. The same way someone who's physically strong is one who typically trains their body to become stronger, meaning they allow themselves to, go through tough things, to lift heavy things, to do tough obstacles or do tough, scenarios to build their level of physical strength. We have to do that with our brain, with our mind, with our mental capacity as well. If we do not use it, what's the old adage? If you don't use it, you lose it. So therefore, we must use and challenge our mental capacity to become full, the full capacity of what it's capable of. And if we don't challenge it, if we don't train it, it will not get there. But again, there's a difference. If illness is there, you have to go get well first, right? It's like if you're sick and you go to the gym and you want to train, in a lot of instances, you're going to feel even worse after training hard if you're actually sick, right? You have to get well first. Because when you're physically training your body, you're not building muscle, you're actually breaking things down even more. But when your body repairs, it then becomes stronger and more resilient. When you're training your mind, when you're doing things that are intellectually challenging or something that's going to allow you to push your or challenge you to push your limits, it's going to break you down a little bit. But in the process of breaking down, you then have time to rebuild, and you rebuild stronger after that. That's why going through things helps you to build a level of resiliency and overcome that mental weakness. And, as a parent, I'm going to tell you it's challenging because as a parent, a lot of times we want to make things as easy as possible for our kids, right? Inadvertently. Like a lot of times we want to make things as easy as possible for our kids. But the reality is, if we don't allow them to go through challenges, then they don't get the opportunity to break down a little bit and then rebuild stronger and formulate that level of mental strength. And they then go through life with a level of mental weakness because they've never gone through stuff. right? They've never overcome challenges, because when you overcome something, then as a parent, it's my job to help them create that mental model of understanding what process helped them to overcome that challenge. Now they have this neural pathway or this mental mapping of how to overcome various challenges. And the more they do that, the more confidence they build, right? So, and that's not just for kids, that's for us adults. We have to go through things so that we can build the level of confidence necessary to move through similar things like that in the future effectively. Confidence is rooted on your experiences, right? So when you have a bank of experiences, you then become more confident. And when you become more confident, that will present as mental resiliency or mental strength or mental fitness, so to speak. But again, if there are illnesses in place, you got to go get healed first, because it's going to be hard. It's like you take one step back, one step forward, and two or three steps back. We got to get healed first. Let's hear another clip from this lady Maya Rashora. Again, I might be mispronouncing her last name. I apologize. And she was with Sean Stevenson on his show very recently.
Fit if you, let's say, go to the gym, you do yoga, running, dancing, whatever it might be. So in the same way, you're only mentally fit if you are actively training the brain. And I think, whenever I'm on like panels or having conversations with people at schools or companies, everyone stops at the awareness of mental health. But then what's after that? Like, what are you actually doing about it? It's like me.
What are you actually doing about it? See, that's the thing. A lot of times we just talk about one thing because that's the elephant in the room, right? But what you do with that thing. And again, there are situations and scenarios in which you do need to go get help, right? But then what do you do after that? Okay, we've healed that thing. We've gotten the mental illness component thing addressed. So now what do we do? Right? How do I now do what I can do to become more mentally, fit, more mentally strong? And that's where the processes take place. And again, to me, an easy process is for you to allow yourself to overcome challenges. And as you overcome a challenge, start documenting the process. What steps did I take to overcome that challenge? Be reflective. We don't even have to be formal in how we operate. Just sit at times and reflect on how you overcame a particular challenge. What were the takeaways? What lessons were learned? How could you have done that thing differently? So that as you move forward, you now have a mental mapping or some type of process in place to approach the next challenge that will come. Because the reality is, challenges are going to come. Life is literally a series of challenges that present themselves day in and day out. The question is, how do you approach those challenges? Do you approach those challenges through the lens of, you know what? I have everything that I need. I'm capable of approaching this thing in a way that will ultimately lead to either me solving the problem or learning a lesson, right? It's pretty much approaching a challenge through the lens of abundance versus scarcity. A lot of us approach a challenge through the lens of, I don't have what I need. I don't have enough. I'm lesser than. And the thing is, if you approach challenges that way, you're ultimately going to get a result that is pretty much indicative of the fact that you stepped into that challenge with the perspective of not being prepared or not being ready to handle it. On the flip side, if you at least approach it through the lens of, I have what I need, or I'm capable of finding or accessing what I need, that changes everything. But that's also an indication of your mental fitness, right? Because you've gone through things before. And so don't beat yourself up if, maybe we've kind of cowered a little bit in the midst of some challenging scenarios. It happens to all of us, right? We're imperfect beings. Like this, Jesus was the only perfect entity to, touch the earth, right? That's real. But the flip side of that is, give yourself some grace. but then also understand that, okay, in reflection, I could have done things differently. And so going forward, I'm going to approach it differently and just start with that mentality. There, I consider it my kind of the four parts of being undeniable, right? Four components being, and that being your attitude, your effort, mastery of the tools at your disposal. So basically, mastery of the things that you have access to, but then mastery of the rules of the game that you're actually playing. So, whatever scenario or circumstance that you encounter, are you mastering the rules of that particular scenario, right? Again, attitude, effort, mastery of your tools, and mastery of the rules of the game, right? The reality is, if you can approach every situation with a great attitude, bringing your best effort, mastering or knowing what you bring to the table. So that's knowing your gifts, talents, skills, but then also knowing what you don't have, right? So that you can basically focus your attention on leveraging what you have access to. And then finally understanding, the circumstances that you're, encountering, right? The rules of the game. If you can figure out a way to leverage those four components, you then put yourself in a position of being undeniable. Now, undeniable does not mean that you have a perfect result. It doesn't mean that you win all the time. But the reality is, if I'm undeniable, I'm at least not giving the opposition or the adversary, I'm not giving them ammunition against me. I basically bring everything that I have to the table. I lay it out. And if it works, cool. If it doesn't work, guess what? I'm going to learn from it so that next time that I face a challenge or an obstacle, I'll be better prepared. Right. So again, there's no losses, only lessons. Again, I know people say that all the time, but it's the way that you approach it. You dig? So again, there is a difference between mental illness and mental weakness. If you or someone around you is dealing with mental illness, we must prioritize healing. That's step one. Just like your body. If your body's ill, go get well first. But if it's not mental illness and it's mental weakness, that means it's time to get strong. That means you have to incorporate some level of mental fitness. Just like you would train your body, you have to train your mind as well. Allow yourself to go through some challenges, but be reflective of how you overcome those challenges or how you approach those challenges to build protocols and frameworks as you move forward. Then you have the capacity to become more mentally strong in how you operate. All right. Well, hey, yo, this is your man, Coach Mike D. And again, this is all about you becoming the quarterback of your mindset. Again, you have to quarterback your mindset. If you don't take control of that, there are forces out there that are ultimately trying to control your mindset. And we can't let that happen because you're special. There's something special about your life, and you need to do that and do that at a very high level. But it starts with you accepting it and walking in that purpose. All right. Well, hey, as always, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. And until next time, I'll holler at you. Peace.